Perfect. So thank you very much for having me on the platform. It is a great honor to be here and speaking to all of you. And more than me teaching anything, I think it's more about me learning from all you guys, because there is so much out there in the universe to actually learn. And that's why I kind of enjoy doing these sessions, because I just set a path, and then after that, we can all join into the discussions. As Shalu mentioned, I live in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh. I moved here recently, 6 months back, but before that I was in Dubai, and prior to that in Gurgaon, and then before that in Mumbai. So I've been working as a professional for about 27 years. I have a Monday to Friday, or as I can say here in Saudi Arabia, Sunday to Thursday job, which is in brand licensing, where I work full-time with an organization here in Saudi. But at the same time, I also work as a logotherapist and as a life coach over the weekends. And typically that gives me a lot of joy, because I enjoy talking to people one-to-one, as well as doing sessions and engaging with people at various levels, either on a personal one-to-one level or as a group level. I will share my YouTube channel link on the chat. So just in case if any one of you would like to kind of look at it, and feel free to reach me. There's a lot of content that I keep putting there, and trying to build a small community there, but would be happy to hear feedback and advice on the way forward there as well. So let's jump into straight to the topic. Why I call this session as Be Selfish. It's a lot of people have questioned me on this thing, that why do you kind of start off in a negative fashion and tell someone that you should be selfish in life? And the whole idea here is, and this is a session I do also for a lot of corporate companies, members of the corporate world, and specifically those who are in HR have a specific problem with this word. But it's very simple. Being selfish is not bad as an idea, because if we are not selfish, we won't be able to take care of ourselves. We won't be able to understand ourselves. We won't be able to prepare ourselves to handle what's happening in the world around us. And hence it's important to first take care of us before we can help others. So the whole philosophy of being selfish stems from the fact that when we're traveling in an airplane, they always tell us one thing, right? That in case of an emergency, wear your oxygen mask first before. Hello? There is some disturbance that's coming in. 1 second.
I just unmuted. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, yeah. So, when we travel in an airplane, it is a very simple philosophy that in case of an emergency, wear your oxygen mask first before helping others. They don't tell us just wear your mask and jump off the airplane. They tell us first, wear your mask, equip yourself, make yourself safe, and then help others. It's the same philosophy that we use in logotherapy as well, that if you are not able to understand yourself, if you're not able to understand the meaning of your own life, if you're not able to understand the meaning of your own self per se, you won't be able to kind of add value to somebody else's life. So before you think of others, first prepare yourself to handle that journey. I am an active member of the Viktor Frankl Institute in Ireland. I actually did my logotherapy and existential analysis from there. And hence some of the data that you will find here will actually is actually borrowed from there. So hence the credit goes to the Viktor Frankl Institute for helping me put this together. As you know, probably, some of you would be interested, some of you may have read, some of you may have heard, or some of you may be following. Viktor Frankl was the person who actually created the school of psychology called logotherapy. So what does logotherapy really mean? Logo is nothing but, it means meaning. It comes from a Greek word called logos, which actually means meaning. When the school of psychology started, it was actually called meaning therapy. And over a period of time, it became logotherapy as we know it today. But in reality, it is nothing but something that helps you understand the meaning of your life. So just like we design logos, right? We design, we have a logo for, let's say, Starbucks or McDonald's or any of the other major chains or any of our companies that we work for, they have their logo. Every logo has a meaning. So logotherapy helps us design the meaning of our life. Viktor Frankl, for the first few years of his life, actually practiced a different school of psychology, and we'll talk about it on the next slide. But he was somebody who wrote this very, very powerful book called Man's Search for Meaning, which went on to become one of the best-selling books of all times, and amongst the top 100 most influential books of the last century. The book has transformed many people's lives, including myself. I myself, when I was going through my own journey of discovering the meaning of life, I kind of was fortunate to get introduced to this book. And when I read the book, I kind of read it 3 times over a period of 1 week, and it changed me completely. And that's how I got attracted towards logotherapy in 2018. So before we get into the logotherapy school of psychology, we need to understand the background of psychology. And most of us probably interested in psychology would know this, that there are 3 main schools of psychology that are recognized in the world. The biggest one is psychoanalysis, that focuses on the whole idea that human beings, whatever we do in our life, focuses on the whole idea of seeking pleasure. And that was something that was created by Dr. Sigmund Freud, who's also known as the father of modern psychology. So it's very simple. Anything that we do in our lives, if it gives us pleasure, we will do it happily. If it doesn't give us pleasure, it will cause us pain, and that's where the problem starts in our world. This school of psychology was challenged by Dr. Alfred Adler, who created the individual psychology, where he says that whatever we do revolves around the whole aspect of power. It's not pleasure, but power. What kind of power? It could be anything. It could be financial power. It could be physical power. It could be monetary power. It could be political power. It could be power in relationships, for that matter, emotional power, so to say. And anything that we do revolves around the whole concept of power. Of course, these schools of psychology are much deeper, and that requires separate individual sessions in itself. But in the overall scheme of things, pleasure and power are 2 things that are advocated by the world of psychology today. And most psychiatrists in the world actually follow these 2 schools of psychology to treat their patients. Now, Viktor Frankl was a student of Alfred Adler, and for the first 8 to 10 years of his life, actually practiced as a psychiatrist, and practiced the individual school of psychology, where he was also trying to cure patients by introducing them to the whole idea of power at the end of the journey, of the end of the painful journey. But there was a twist. As Frankl studied his patients more and more, he realized that it was not pleasure, nor was it power that his patients were seeking. What they were seeking was to understand the meaning of what was happening in their life. So, very simple terms, if something goes wrong with us in our life, let's say, God forbid, if any one of us has an accident, the first thing we think of, why did this happen to us? We don't think about the fact that, oh, now the accident has happened. Okay, let me go through it because it might make me more powerful, or there might be some pleasure at the end of it, or I may become stronger after this, or whatever. We don't think of those things immediately. The first thought that comes into my mind is, why did this happen to me? Another simple example to support this is, if any one of us, God forbid, again, loses our jobs. Specifically during COVID, a lot of us faced that challenge. Nobody thought immediately that, okay, you know what, there's no problem if I've lost my job. I may find something better. I may find some pleasure in the free time that I have, or I may find a better job or better paying job that will make me more financially stable later on, or my career will grow, etc. What we immediately thought was, why did this happen to me? What was the reason why I was the chosen one? Why did this happen to me? So Frankl went ahead and started asking this question, that why is very important for us to understand when treating patients. If they are able to know the why of their life, if they are able to know the larger meaning of their life, if they are able to know the larger purpose of their life, they can go through all the challenges that life has to offer to them. So if a person who's very capable, very confident, knows that even if he's lost his job, if he knows the why and the larger purpose of his life, he knows himself, he knows his capacities, he knows his opportunities, he will not worry about losing one job because he knows what he's capable of and what he can actually achieve in his life, even without this job. So Frankl advocated a new school of psychology, which he called logotherapy or meaning therapy to start with. And he said that let's first focus on finding the meaning or the purpose of life. A lot of it that he spoke about also takes inspiration from various other aspects of life as well. He was heavily influenced by the Japanese philosophy of Ikigai as well. And that is again something that has influence in his life. He was influenced a lot by Buddhism as well. And there are references of Buddhism in his philosophy as well. He was influenced a lot by Zen and Chinese philosophies as well of life. And he specifically mentions them in several books of his. He wrote about 39 books in his time frame. I've read around 16 of them so far, and I am in the process of reading more and learning more every day. But I don't know when I'll be able to finish his 39th book. But I see a lot of traces, not just from the various forms of life, various ways of living life, but he also utilizes a lot of examples from the religious scriptures, from spirituality. And this is what makes logotherapy different from the rest of the schools of psychology, because logotherapy brings about an element of spiritualism in psychology as well. It does talk about the fact that there is something which is beyond human understanding. It does talk about the fact that there is a power, there is an unknown source of inspiration, an unknown source of energy which we do not recognize. We call it by different names, we call it by different forms, but there is something that exists which controls all of us. The universal spirit, as many people call it, which binds all of us together. And there are billions of dollars being spent today on researchers to talk about spiritualism, to talk about the universal spirit and how we are all interconnected. And, conscious manifestation and a whole bunch of other practices kind of go on to show that, yes, there is a spiritual connection between each one of us as human beings. And that is what he also starts talking about while he writes his various books over a period of time. Coming back to Man's Search for Meaning, as I told you, it was one of the 100 most influential books of the 20th century as voted by the US Congress. And if any one of you has read this book, it's kind of heavy. It's a book about Frankel's years in the concentration camps during the World War II. He was captured. He was sent to Auschwitz, where he stayed for 2.5 years. And during this 2.5 years, he spent a lot of time suffering, just like many other people. There were lots of people, hundreds and thousands and millions who lost their life in those camps, but there were very few who actually survived. And one of them was Frankl. And the book is actually nothing but a journey of Frankel's 2.5 years in the concentration camps. And the story of how this book came about is also very interesting. So just before being arrested, Frankl had half of this book, which is the concepts of logotherapy, already written with him. Okay. The day he was arrested, he had the transcript of the book with him. And when he went to the jail, the jailer took out all the belongings of the people, and from his coat, he removed the book as well, and he tore it into pieces in front of him. Now, his entire years of work that Frankl had put in doing research, putting his concepts of logotherapy, etc., were just destroyed in front of his eyes in no time. And back in those days, in the 1930s, there were no photocopiers or there were no computers to have backups and data servers, etc. All he had was one manually written transcript of the book with him. And in a way, this became one of his reasons and one of his purposes to actually survive. So when people asked Frankl, how was he able to survive in the concentration camps, in those miseries, in the miserable conditions where you probably knew that you would never come out alive? He said there were just two things that became his sole purpose in life. His two things that actually gave meaning to his life, even in those 2.5 years. Number one was his wife. Both he and his wife were arrested together, And when they were arrested, the wife was 2 months pregnant. Okay. And each day that he was in the concentration camp, he would think about his wife and he would think about his unborn child, and eventually thought in 2.5 years that the baby would have been born and would be growing. Every now and then, when he was suffering in the concentration camp, every now and then when he was beaten up, every now and then when something bad was meant to happen, and when they would sleep with dead bodies and they would eat out of dead bodies, he would only think about his wife and his child. And that would give him sudden inspiration and sudden energy and motivation to go out, to continue living in this misery, because eventually he knew he wanted to go out and meet them. It's very unfortunate that the wife was executed within the first week of being arrested, because they would not keep anybody who was not going to be of any use to them. But Frankel didn't know this. For 2.5 years, he kept on believing that his wife and child were going to be out there waiting for him when he steps out of this misery. So that became the first objective for him, first purpose of his life, that he wanted to survive anything that life was giving him, because he wanted to go and see his wife and child. The second purpose that he says that is also mentioned in the book was the fact that he wanted this book to be rewritten. He wanted to complete the concepts of logotherapy. He wanted logotherapy to come out to the world. And that again became his motivation. And in over 2.5 years, he actually compiled, rewrote all his concepts, all his books. And this time he was able to apply those concepts of logotherapy on himself and people around him, and give them motivation and inspiration to continue living the life that they were living. And so when he came out of the concentration camp, he actually had the second half of the book completely ready with him, which he obviously published. But before that, he added an autobiography of his 2.5 years in the concentration camp. So the first half of the book is his story. The second half of the book is a textbook on logotherapy. It's a very small, tiny book. If you haven't read it, I would recommend you do, if you're interested in the topic. But it is heavy. It's something that might make you start thinking, or to me, it made me start valuing my life a lot more. Because when you realize what the world has gone through and what some people have gone through, you just feel so blessed and so amazed at this gift that life has provided us, and that we are able to live and breathe and eat and drink in a free environment, not in the same manner. And when you look at comparisons to what those guys lived in the 1930s and what we live in, our problems tend to become so small in front of them. So this book is very inspirational, and it's something that I highly recommend to all my clients and to all the people that I talk to during my course. So what is logotherapy? There are just 3 basic principles of logotherapy. And this is something that forms the crux of the therapy process itself. Number 1, there is meaning in everything that happens in life. Nothing in life is meaningless. If we believe that there is something that is happening in our lives which is of no value, which has no meaning, there is no purpose, we are so wrong. If something is happening with us, that means it's meant to happen. It is supposed to be there for a reason. And that's the second point of logotherapy, where we say that as a human being, we are constantly looking for that reason. Life is a journey about discovering our meaning. Okay. And Frankel has given so many references and instances in his books that he talks about the fact that even on the last day of our lives, we may not be completely well aware about what our meaning really was. And a lot of people ask me this question. So do you think this meaning, once I discover something, then it's like, okay, hooray, I found, eureka, I found my meaning and that's it. No. Meaning keeps changing from time to time. It's simple. We call something called momentary meaning, or meaning of the moment, which again is something very important for us to understand. It's very simple. As children, the meaning of our life was very different. All we wanted to do was to go to school, come back and enjoy, play with our friends and have a good meal and a good night's sleep. We were not worried about the tensions of the world and the wars and all of that stuff. As we grew older, as we went to college, our meaning changes. As we started working, our meaning changes. As we got married, our meaning changes. When we had children, our meaning changes. When we reach midlife crisis, our meaning changes. When we switch jobs, our meaning change. When we retire, our meaning changes, right? As we come towards the last phase of our life, our meaning changes. But there is always a meaning that's there in the life. And that is what we are constantly looking for. The third thing that forms the crux of logotherapy is that the way each one of us will perceive the meaning is different from one another. And that is because it's based on a lot of unique factors. So, for example, if I show you a painting and I say, okay, define this painting. Okay, we are 20 of us on this call right now, and all 20 of us will have a different look at that painting and will describe the painting differently. That does not mean that my definition is right and your definition is wrong. It just means that we are all different. It just means that we're all looking at that painting differently. It just means that the way of how we perceive that painting is different. And that is what logotherapy is all about. It helps you understand as a human being that it is okay to have differences of opinion. It is okay to have differences with your own family members. It's okay to have differences in the manner in which somebody else looks at life versus somebody else doesn't look at life, right? That's because that's their way of living. I mean, it's very funny, but I was coaching a client yesterday, and this fellow started talking about how stressed he's become in life because he's a morning person. He wakes up at 5 in the morning, whereas his wife wakes up at 9 in the morning. Okay. And that is what is causing him a lot of stress in his life, because he just doesn't believe that anybody can sleep till 9 o'clock in the morning. I mean, he just doesn't understand how you could do that. Okay. And it's just that, it's not that he doesn't love his wife. It's just that he just wants her to wake up early. While she has a philosophy that why do you want to wake early when everything can go at a slow, smooth pace? Okay. Now, somewhere they will need to come to a compromise, but the fact is it's causing stress to one person. It doesn't cause stress to the other person. The wife is completely okay with whatever he feels. She's getting up at 9 o'clock and she's very happy with her life, right? But this guy wakes up at 5 in the morning, but he's completely stressed. Now, it's a very different way of looking at life. For somebody who works in the night, sleeping in the day is very normal. For somebody who works in the day, sleeping in the night is very normal. It all depends upon the circumstances and the situations that you are dealing with. The trick is to be happy in whatever situation that life throws you at. So what is logotherapy in action? And of course, there are lots of detailed definitions of logotherapy and what I spoke to you about in the previous slide also. And if the need be, we can always get together for an individual session to understand more details of it. But in a nutshell, how do we use logotherapy in trying to help people resolve their problems? Firstly, is helping you find a why. Now, most of us suffer from this problem that we don't know the meaning of our lives. Okay. And why do we don't know the meaning of our lives? Because it is very simple. We don't understand ourselves. We don't understand who we really are. What are we really made of? What are we really capable of? I mean, if I simply ask people to define themselves, they just go round and round in circles. Most of us, when I do my group sessions and my meetups, when I do my meetups regularly, I kind of ask people to introduce themselves, and everybody will say, I'm so and so, and I work at so and so place. Very normal. But that name that you are introducing yourself as was not given by yourself, was not chosen by you. The designation that you work as or what you do as for your work is not something that was chosen by you. Okay. Then how can you define yourself like that? You cannot define yourself by just a name and a designation. There is a lot more in you as a person than just being a name and a designation. So what we do is we first encourage people to find their why, who they really are, what they really mean to themselves. And if you're not important to yourself, you will never be important to someone else. So the key is to be important to yourself first. And that is what we kind of look at and tell people, find your purpose. No matter what age you are at, you need to find your purpose, find your meaning. And that is something that we can easily do using logotherapy. The next point is success and happiness cannot be pursued. The identification of the fact that success and happiness are two different concepts. We believe if we are successful, now what's the definition of successful, right? Having a big bank balance, having a big car, having a big house. Does all of this bring you happiness? The reality is no. I mean, we all know this very well. We've all experienced it at various levels. We all go after certain things in life which we want to achieve. And when we finally achieve that, we feel somewhere lost, right? We don't feel so happy. We're like, okay, fine, so what? I've done this, right? That's because success or happiness does not lie in the end result. Happiness lies in doing or reaching that end result. The journey is more important than the goal, than the end result. So it's simple. If you look at coaches who train people, sports people, right? If any sports coach, any good sports coach would never tell you that focus on coming first or winning the race. He will tell you this focus on becoming better than what you were yesterday, right? And that is the sign of a good sports coach, because he tells you to improvise on your own self, compete with your own self. Don't compete with someone else, because that someone else is competing with his own self. So if you compete with yourself, you know you can beat yourself, you can be better than yourself, what you were yesterday, you will be able to find happiness. The journey is where the happiness lies. It is not the end result. Third is choose your own attitude. Viktor Frankl had a very interesting saying, and he said that there is no freedom in this world. Okay, we don't take birth on our own free will. Okay, we don't take birth when we take birth. Nobody asks us before keeping our name. Nobody asks us, okay, this is the religion you should go to. We are just told you're born a Hindu, you're born a Christian, you're born a Muslim. Nobody asks us, do we really want to be there? Right? Nobody asks us what we should be eating, what we should be wearing, right? We all have our own things that have been given to us. We are sent off to a school. Nobody asks us, do we really want to go to a school, right? What is it that we are supposed to study in the school? We don't decide. Somebody else decides it for us. If we make up our mind to go and say is to study medicine or study engineering or study science or arts or culture or history, somebody else has already pre-written the syllabus and made it ready for you. And they tell you, okay, just learn this because this is what we're going to ask you in the exam. So the thing is, there's no freedom left when we move out of our college, right? We go and start working. You're just working for somebody else. Somebody else lays the direction, tells you what to do, what not to do. Right? Most of the times, majority of the population on this planet live in that. They all just follow somebody else. They don't make choices. The only freedom that Frankl talks about that we hold in our life is the freedom to choose the response, is to freedom to have the response to the situation that life is throwing at us. That's the only thing that we are free to enjoy. There is nothing like freedom in this world. I mean, will not even enjoy the freedom of deciding how we are going to die. We don't know that. And after we die, what's going to happen to us also, nobody knows, right? Nobody knows what they're going to do to our bodies, whether they will really take care of us properly, whether they will cremate us properly, whether they'll bury us properly. All of that we can't decide, and we don't know what will happen. It'll just be people around us who will decide. And after we die, where we go, we don't know. There is a universal power that decides that, or probably has something which we are not even aware of as human beings. What we are only capable of doing is, what do we do with our life now? And that is what matters a lot. The choices, we are made of our own choices. If I'm wearing black today, that's my own choice. If I'm talking to you all today, that's my choice. If you guys have decided to attend a session, that's your choice. Nobody forced you to come and sit here. It's your choice. If you choose after this session to go back and tell one person or 10 people or 20 people about this session, that's your choice. But if you decide to say that, oh, it was a waste of time, that's your choice. Doesn't mean you are right or wrong. It's just that you've chosen to do that at that point of time. Life has given you an opportunity. Now, what you make out of it is purely up to you. The next point is, if you cannot change the situation, change yourself. This is a very, very simple solution to a lot of things. Okay. We tend to worry about, oh, what will happen if my life will end if I don't continue with this thing. Right? You cannot change a situation. Right? Just change yourself. It's the same example. If I was talking to this guy whose wife wakes up at 9 o'clock, and he was like, and I told him, I said, you cannot change her mindset. You've tried a lot for many years. They've been married for a few years. It's not that it's a new marriage or something. Change yourself. Stop thinking about it. Just let her be, let her go, let her do what makes her happy. Why are you stressing just because she doesn't wake up at 5 in the morning? You consider yourself, change your attitude towards that. Think that you have time from 5 in the morning till 9 in the morning, all to yourself, all alone. Imagine what all you can do, how you can improvise yourself. What can you do that will make you a better person? If you change yourself, the situation doesn't remain so toxic at the end of the day. I mean, all of us know about Akshay Kumar. He wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day. His wife doesn't wake up at that time. And in several interviews, he said this openly. He says, I don't worry about what my family does because I can't control their life, but I can control my life. So I tend to change myself. I am like this. If they want to join me, more than happy. If they don't want to join me, it's their choice. Yes. As a father, he tells his children. As a husband, he tells his wife. But if they don't want to listen, it's purely their call. You can't keep on cribbing about something or crying about something you don't have control over. So if you cannot change a situation, just change yourself and move on. The last point is, suffering ceases to be suffering when it finds meaning. This again is something that is inspired from Viktor Frankl's books itself. And if you see what he went through during the concentration camps, if you are suffering and you find meaning in that suffering, it is no longer suffering. It just becomes a routine part of life. So I'll give you another example. Last year, 2 years ago, I was invited to go to one of the labor camps in Dubai. Dubai has a lot of these labor camps where people from all over the world come, specifically Indians, Pakistanis, Sri Lankans. They come and they stay there in these camps, and they work as laborers across various projects in Dubai. Many of them, 6, 8 people in one room. It's not a great life for them to live in. But we were told, we were a group of 4 or 5 therapists who were taken there just to spend an evening with them, to motivate them, encourage them. And what happened was very, very surreal for us as an experience. When we went there, they had a courtyard in between their building. And there was a bonfire where they were cooking food. And there were people sitting all across, and they were singing and dancing and enjoying themselves. And it was surprising to us because we felt probably that there might be a sense of gloom, a sense of depression with them. But then as we started talking to these people, we realized that they don't think their life is miserable. Because one of them showed me, I asked him very clearly that, why do you live here all alone in this miserable condition, with 6, 8 other people, when you work for like 16 hours a day in, almost 50 degrees temperature? And he just removed a photograph of his 2 daughters from his wallet, and he showed it to me. And he says, every morning when my wife sends me a picture or a video of my daughters going to an English school, I feel what I'm doing is nothing. Right? Because he never went to school. His parents never sent him to a school. And now he's got 2 daughters, and both of them go to an English medium school only because he is able to kind of send the money and support them. So he says, when I look at their faces every morning, going to school happily, I don't consider my situation as suffering at all. I feel it is my duty to do that for them. There was another guy I met who was from the Philippines. And again, I asked him the same question, why are you here? And why are you going through all of these sufferings? And he said, my parents live in my village in the Philippines, and mine is the only house that is like a proper pakka house, right, in my entire village. And that is only possible because of me working hard and sending that money back to my parents so that they can live in a proper home. Now, when you find meaning to your life, when you find a purpose to your life, life ceases to become suffering. We've had so many examples. You look at Mother Teresa. I'm a big follower of Mother Teresa and her philosophy, and I read her books very often for inspiration. I mean, she suffered so much in her life, so many things that she had to struggle for people. She saw so much suffering herself, in terms of the way she used to live with people, etc. But there was a larger purpose. She wanted to do good to others. She wanted to serve that purpose for others. So if you find meaning, then it's no longer suffering. It just becomes meaning and your purpose in life itself. So three things that I recommend to clients based on logotherapy for you to do. And these could be simple techniques which even you can adopt in your daily lives. And I will explain to you very quickly in terms of examples as well. Number one, always focus on your creative side. We tend to forget this side of ours completely. Nowadays, we live in a world that's dominated by logic, left side of the brain, right? We don't want to consider being creative at all. Very wrong. Always have a creative side to yourself, because that's probably the solution to all your problems that's going to come in. And I'll explain to you how I use this very effectively in one of my coaching sessions. I had a client in Dubai who is a successful restaurateur. She runs a few restaurants. Amazing life. If you meet her, you will not even feel like she would have a problem in her life. Very wealthy, well-to-do, has been living there for almost 2 decades. Wonderful family, wonderful set of children. Everything is amazing. But when she came to one of my sessions, the next day she calls me and says, I want to meet you. And when I met her, she told me for about an hour or so how wonderful her life was. It was like a fairy tale life in Dubai. And then eventually she came down to the fact that despite all of this, I don't know, but I'm not happy. I don't find happiness. So we went deeper into the conversation to try and understand that before she came to Dubai, what was she really like? And she was an artist at hand. She used to paint and draw. Why did she leave it? Because she came to Dubai, new country, got married, settled here, in-laws, family, responsibility. Within a year, had her first child, and life just took its own turn. She forgot about painting completely. Right. On the second session that I called her for the therapy, I just brought her some canvas and paintbrush, and I said, today's session is all about you painting whatever you want to paint. And in about an hour and a half's time, she came out of the therapy room with a beautiful painting that she had made, and with tears in her eyes, because she said, I've never been so happy in my life in the last so many years. The joy that she felt by igniting her creative side was simply amazing. And she took that, and that is what I went on to explain to her, that what was missing in her life is what was she doing for herself. She was doing everything for everyone else, running a business, running a house, being a parent, all of that stuff. But she was not doing anything for herself. So it's been more than 2.5 years now, and she at least ensures that she spends 15 to 20 minutes of her time every day just painting something. And every time she finishes a painting, she calls me and she tells me that I've finished one. And surprisingly, a lot of her paintings are now in her own restaurants. And she tells me this, that just focusing for that 15, 20 minutes of her day on doing something that she enjoys kind of balances her entire day off. So important to just have a connection with your creative side. And what is that creative side? It is not linked to your work. Okay, it is not linked to your work. I have a client in Bombay. He's a musician. He's a music director. I won't name him, but he's a famous one. And when I spoke to him about this, when we were doing our therapy sessions, and I told him that, he should ignite his creative side, he laughed at me. He said, I make music for a living. That's my creativity. I said, that's exactly your problem. You don't make music. You don't use your creative side for really calming you down or cooling you down. You are using creativity for commercial purposes. Okay. And it so turned out that when we went into details of how we could discover his creative side, he was a baker at heart. He loved to bake, to cook, to make cookies and cakes, etc. And he started doing that for himself and for his children. And today he finds so much solace. So every time, in fact, he's told me recently that, sometimes when he gets this creative blockage in his mind where he's not able to compose music, he just leaves the studio, goes to his home, starts baking something, and that's when he comes back into life and he starts doing his music again. Creativity can really help you. The second is experience living in the moment. So Dale Carnegie said a very famous quote. We all must be aware about this. Today is the tomorrow we were worried about yesterday, right? But the problem is we only live in tomorrow and we live in yesterday. We forget the today completely, right? So this again is something that we need to start enacting in our lives. We need to start putting it in our lives. Procrastination is not a solution. It's the new epidemic in the world today. We will do this from tomorrow. We will start working on this tomorrow. The tomorrow never arrives. So I always tell all my clients, as a practice from today, from now, from this moment, start telling yourself, I will do this today. I will do this now. You may physically do that thing maybe later, maybe tomorrow, maybe 10 days later, 1 month later, 1 year later. But start telling your mind, start telling yourself, I will do this now. Because your mind kind of connects back with the universal spirit. And, conscious manifestation is another aspect of how we say, because if we don't tell ourselves what we really want, the universe is not going to make that happen. So you have to start telling yourself that I will start doing it today. Don't leave it to tomorrow, right? The last, not the least, have a yes to life attitude, right? No matter what happens in our lives, there's always a good thing that's going to happen at the end of it, right? All of us have gone through bad phases in our lives. All of us have gone through sufferings in our life, but life has come back a full circle, right? There's always things that I went through a major depression in my life in 2006. At that time, I felt my life was finished. It was over. Okay? But today, when I look back at it, or rather not today, I think I'm a little more conscious of these things. And I look at life in a very different fashion. But when I talk about it, 18, 19 years ago, when I went through this, I had a very different approach towards life, to the extent that I had suicidal tendencies at that point of time. I thought my life was just over. Today, when I look at it, I feel happy that that thing happened to me, because my life completely changed after that. I was able to seek therapy. I got a coach. I'm lucky that I have the same coach and mentor now for almost 18 years. And she's been a pillar of strength to me. And I completely, give credit to that situation in my life. If that situation had not come in, I wouldn't have met my mentor. I wouldn't have got into a new profession. I wouldn't have been doing what I'm doing today. So on hindsight, when I look at it, it was a positive thing for me. At that time, it was an absolutely amazing thing to happen, a negative thing to happen. I wanted to just kill myself. But having the faith, having yes to life, saying yes to life, looking at the wonderful people around us, and more importantly, which I always tell everybody, don't be shy of asking for help. Most of us live in this fear, oh, dunya kya bolegi? When we are going through our bad time and when we are going through our depression, dunya nahi aati hai. Nobody comes for us, right? So we should not be worried about dunya kya bolegi. Right? I am not ashamed of talking of my depression. I talk about it openly because yes, it was a problem. I was facing something. I had to talk about it. Right? If I hadn't spoken about it, probably I would have taken my own life. Probably I would have been a miserable person to what I am. But just because life gives you all the mechanics, all the means to live and to come out of that situation. I was reading one of the books by Mother Teresa, and she says she had an inherent belief that God will never put you in a situation that you cannot handle. So if you are in a situation, only you have the capacity to handle it and nobody else. So just be confident about yourself, have a yes to life attitude, and you'll be completely fine as far as life is concerned. So that's a brief introduction to logotherapy. I hope it's not even 1% of what logotherapy is all about. There's a lot many more concepts, a lot many more scientific concepts that get involved. But this was a short and sweet introduction. I hope it made sense to a lot of you. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to address them for you.
Thank you, Nitin. That was such a powerful, presentation, and I feel that it has helped all of us individually, and we all could connect to what you were saying.
Thank you very much.
It was very powerful. Okay, so now we open the floor for questions. If you have any question, you can write it in the chat box, or you can ask directly.
Let us say something.
Yes, please.
It is better to be hated for whom you are than to be loved for whom you're not.
Sorry, I didn't understand your question.
It is better to be hated for who you are than to be loved for whom you're not.
Yes, of course.
It's a statement.
Yes, of course. That is so true. It is so true, because we all tend to live a world for someone else, right?
Social mask.
Yes,
So
that's what it is.
It is said it is better to be hated for who you are than to be
Yes.
loved for whom you're not.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Because all of us live in this notion, right, that we have to do this for someone else, right? Exactly. So you can see for yourself that how we kind of live our lives for other people. Somebody else determines this for us, right? Like I always have this discussion and debate with people about our schooling system, about our education system per se, right? And Frankel had a very, very strong opinion about our schooling system and education system around the world also. The way it has been designed, right? It's just being designed to put pressure on us. If you see, from the time we enter the school, there is this rat race that kind of starts. You do this because you have to go to college. You have to go to college because you have to do, you have to find a job. You have to find a job because you have to get married and settle down in life. As soon as you get married, you have to have children. Your children grow up, and then the whole cycle starts again, right? And by the time you actually realize that you had to live a life as well in between, the life is almost kind of come to an end, right? So Frankel has a very, very strong opinion. In fact, he writes very aggressively about this, that the schooling system that has been designed, the education systems that people have designed, is something that is completely wrong. And it does not help us to come out to be our true self, right? It hides our true self in a way. So I think I told Shalu this thing last time as well. I mean, I have 2 kids and both of them are homeschooled. We don't send them to a school because we do not believe in the education system. Both me and my wife are strong believers that the education system is not meant to give our children the kind of education that we could give them directly. And that's why we've been trying this experiment. Now, whether we are successful or not, we don't know. So far, we think we are. But the fact is, we don't want our children to start living in this thing that, okay, you have to do this because somebody else told you. I don't want them to go to school and live in that pressure that, no, I have to study this topic. I have to study Pythagoras theorem because I have to give an exam. Now, all of us have studied Pythagoras theorem, other than the fact that if we are interested in mathematics, how many of us even remember it? I don't. But I just remember I had to just learn it, drink it and just spew it out in the exam. That's about it. What sense does it make for me at this point of time in my life? Nowhere. Rather, I would teach my children life skills. I want to give this example about this client of mine, young boy of 21 years old, living in Bangalore. And during COVID, he suffered a lot, not because of COVID. Luckily, he was fine. He suffered because nobody ever taught him how to survive. He didn't know how to cook. He didn't know how to even make tea for himself. He was completely dependent on the outside world, the delivery services, so to say. Right? And when COVID came, he was stranded inside the house with no delivery service, nothing, and he didn't know what to do. And that caused him depression, because he used to call his mother and ask her, why did you guys tell me how to cook food or how to survive? Nobody taught us survival skills. right? So the thing is, life is such, I mean, he's brilliant in his work. This boy is brilliant in his work. He used to get good grades. He got an amazing degree, everything. But he just doesn't know basic survival instincts, survival skills. I mean, we all went to school. How many of us actually learned CPR in the school? We still probably don't know how to conduct CPR. It's the basic thing. I mean, I'm proud to say that my 10-year-old son knows how to do it. And I feel secure and happy because I know if something goes wrong with me or with my wife or anybody in the house, he's there. He knows the drill of what to do, right? We would rather teach him those skills rather than telling him that, okay, you know what, beta, ek book lo, Pythagoras theorem subah se raat tak padho. That's not what the world is all about. And today's world is very different. My own children tell me this thing. They said, what is the sense of reading all this when everything can be done on a computer today? You ask them something and they will say, you know, hey Siri, what is this? Just discovering. It's all there. The world has given everything to them on the platter. So teach them something more. Teach them something new. We need to be ourselves. We need to become ourselves rather than be somebody that somebody else wants us to be. So you're correct, sir, when you say that, you know, why do we want to be somebody else? I mean, I would rather, like me and my wife, we are quite hated in our friend circle and with some people in our family also, because they think we've spoiled our children's careers already or futures already, right? But you know what? We just tell them one thing, that we are their parents. I think we have a right to decide what is good or bad for them. And we don't want them to kind of come first and go to Harvard or whatever. We would rather have someday Harvard call them to come and give a speech if possible. That is what I would want my children to do, rather than, you know, they trying to get a seat and then I have to pay millions of rupees to just get them into Harvard. I said, that's not what we would want them to do. If my children know how to talk to people, if they know how to survive in this world, I mean, everybody makes money at the end of the day. Everybody eats food at the end of the day. You just need to be yourself. That's about it. Okay, so Biren has written, how does one make sense and meaning of extreme physical and mental trauma that one endured in one's childhood and had one's childhood stolen away from them? Some talk about karma. How does one even make sense of karma when one does not know if one had a past life or not? Yeah, that is true. So when you talk about physical and mental trauma that one has gone through in the childhood, yes, a lot of people go through that. I have a few clients who unfortunately suffered in that sense as well in their childhood. These were situations that were beyond their control, right? I always have, and again, I can get into like an 1 hour discussion on this, but we know we're short on time. But it's a very simple technique that I try to adapt with people. I know it's easier said than done, but in the larger sense of the term, this is what broadly it is. You should always have 2 buckets in your life, ABC and AUC. Okay, ABC is actions beyond your control, and AUC is actions under your control. Okay, unfortunately, if you've gone through a childhood trauma, it is something that happened in your past. It was something that was beyond your control, right? But just because something that happened in your life which was beyond your control and was in the past doesn't mean that you should have this attitude or choose this attitude to continuing to live with it, right? You can choose today and stand up and say, enough is enough. I want to get rid of this and move on and start a positive life, start a good life, start a life for a better future. Because if you get stuck onto it, you will not be able to move forward in life. It's as simple as that. So always see ABC and AUC. If you can do something about it, please do it. If you cannot do something about it, why do you want to worry about it? Just leave it where it is and move on in life. Again, I'm saying it's easier said than done. It takes a lot of sessions for people to understand this, but this is exactly how life kind of functions. What's not in your control, you cannot aim to control it in the future as well. And of course, you talk about karma. Yeah, one doesn't even make sense of karma when one doesn't even know if you had a past life or not. Yes, that is also true. Again, it's a matter of beliefs, right? If you believe in a particular religion that speaks about past life, next life, birth, rebirth, reincarnation, it's your belief in terms of what you believe is possible and what's not possible. Frankl in Logotherapy does not talk about past life, present life, future life. He says what's there is right now in your hands and the choice that you choose to make, right? It is up to you how you want to determine. Now, whether you follow your religion or you don't follow your religion is purely your choice. Logotherapy does not get into religion per se. It's very important for all of us as far as religion is concerned, for this world is concerned, because it helps bring about certain amount of mental stability in our mind. But it is not something that can be thrusted on people. It's your own individual choice, whether you want to follow or you don't want to follow. Yes, each one of us is born in a religion, but whether we follow that religion and to what extent is completely up to us. So when one talks about karma or past life or future life, yes, we don't know answers. There's a very nice book that Frankl has, and if you guys have an opportunity to read it, which is called Man's Search for Ultimate Meaning, where he tries to address these questions about past life and present life, or the future life. And he kind of says that human mind has a certain limit. Beyond that, don't try to think. Because if you try to think too hard, your mind is not equipped to handle that. That's why we are human beings, right? So when we are in search of our ultimate meaning, and that's why nobody on this planet has been able to find that ultimate meaning. What is that ultimate meaning of our lives? We don't know. We still ask that question, right? So there is a certain, there's a kind of a, you can say like a boundary line. Beyond that, we should stop thinking, because the more we think, the more stress we're going to have to ourselves. Right? So we really don't know, but yes, everything happens for a reason. You call it karma or not, we don't know. We may know the answer why something happened, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe a year later, maybe 10 years later, maybe never. But there's still a reason. As they say, there's method in the madness. Now, what is that madness? We don't know. Okay, we have one more question. I have a 2-year-old and I'm already very unhappy with the school system, but don't know the way out. Super interested in homeschooling, but need guidance. Sure, you should get in touch with me. I will, more than me, it will be my wife who will be able to guide you. She's also coincidentally a coach as well. And she will be able to guide you in terms of putting together, telling you how to go about doing it, to be honest. She knows, she manages the kids better than I do. So that's the way it is. Okay. Ravish is saying maybe we should stop recording as people may be uncomfortable in asking. Yeah, probably. I think the recording is stopped or not.
Yeah,
I think you should stop recording.
just
Maybe.